test. Kol she'enu mechuyev v'davar eno moitze acher yedei chavasan. This is a international klal in all mitzvahs. Now, what does it mean, a mechuyev v'davar? You could have, there are two different kinds of mechuyev v'davar. So you could have a person that, I wore tefillin today already, so I'm not mechuyev to wear tefillin again, right? But I'm mechuyev in tefillin. So in other words, you could be a mechuyev v'davar and just, you've already fulfilled your obligation, therefore you're not mechuyev. But in theory, you're mechuyev in that thing, and there are certain things that person is not mechuyev. Let's say a lady is not mechuyev to wear tefillin, right? So there's two different kinds. So the Mishnah Berurah gets involved in that subject, and it says over here we're talking about somebody that doesn't have the chiyuv doesn't apply to them at all. Not that they're presently not in that situation. Cheresh, shoita, v'katan, peturim. Cheresh, shoita, v'katan, they're all potter. V'cheresh afilu medaber ve'ena shomea ena moitzi. Cheresh, even if he's able to speak, if he can't hear, he's not yaitze. The kiwan de'ena shomea lav bar chiyuv v'hur. A person who cannot hear is not called a bar chiyuv. He is lacking in intelligence. A person cannot hear is lacking in intelligence.
When he says eno moitzi, you said that he's not yotzi.
But he's not mechuyev, and therefore he can't be moitzi anybody else.
Okay.
Right? It goes together. Aval shomea ve'enu medaber. If he can't hear, just because he can't speak, moitzi acher yedei chavasa. Now I'm just going to share with you a random question that came my way today. This random question is interesting in its own right, and it's relevant to what we're about to learn also. Somebody called me up. They had a son that was born. They called me about 2 weeks ago, and he was a Down syndrome son, and he had some kind of a blood issue. His blood, the iron wasn't high enough, this wasn't high enough, and the question was when to make the bris. And I told them that until that issue is straightened out, you can't make a bris. And he called me today, and he said that issue was straightened out, but he has a nursing problem. The baby cannot nurse, at least really is not successful in nursing, and he wants to know if that's a reason to push the bris off. So.
How would they feed the kid just
with a bottle.
It's just a...
Yeah, okay, so now sometimes there can be different reasons why a baby can't nurse. Some kids have a tongue issue. There's all different kinds of issues. I'm not getting involved in the medical aspect of it, but there's one of the issues is that Down syndrome babies usually have muscle problems. In other words, their muscles aren't as developed. They're not so physically able to respond and hold themselves. They're much weaker in that regard. And I spoke to the nurse that was taking care of him and asked her, in her opinion, what's his problem. So she said his problem is just that he's a Down syndrome baby. And therefore I was speaking to a different moil about this, and we came to the conclusion the bris can be done. No, so the other moil says, but I want to ask you a question. At this bris, should they say, Kishem shenichnas bris can't tikar as a torah chuppah ma'asim tovim or not? What is the status of a Down syndrome child? Now, what?
Why not?
I don't understand that answer.
Whatever mitzvahs he'll ever think about doing, he should do.
Will he be a gadol or not? Okay, so this is the question that I was on the phone debating today. And I told this moil something amazing. This moil happens to be, he was brought up in Bnei Brak. So I said, you probably know my uncle. You know my uncle? He said, of course we know him. He was called Harav Atzadik. That's what we called him. And I said his wife, my uncle's wife, she would raise Down syndrome children. And I was at the bar mitzvah of one of these Down syndrome children. And my uncle who, just to understand who uncle is, my uncle was the Panovich Poisik in the base marriage for 40 years. Okay, that's like, he gave him to bench. So after benching, I asked my uncle, I said, Mazeh. So he looked at me like I'm very strange, and he said he's a mechuyev b'mitzvahs just like everybody else. So I said, him? I know this kid. And he said, yes, him. So that was the end of my conversation with my uncle at that time. And about 8 years later, I was commissioned to give a series of halakhic lectures for teachers who deal with special needs children, what they're allowed to do with them, not allowed to do, ladies with boys. That was the subject which I had to deal with. And even in preparation for that series of shiurim, I spoke to my aunt to get understanding of what's really going on. That last one?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
So I just want to see where the battery is.
Okay. I spoke to my aunt to get a feeling for what's going on. Just a side piece of information. I don't remember if I ever said this over in this year. I discussed with my aunt, what is it that these children need the most? Now, if I were to ask you, you would probably say love. She said that is wrong. They need that you care about them. Okay?
What's the difference?
Okay, now that's what she told me.
Okay.
Now, this prompted in my mind a question which I would like to share with you, and this is to me this was a fascinating discovery. In America, we have things that we like and things that we love. There is no connection between things that we like and things that we love. Is that the way it is in South Africa also? Now, in Lashon HaKodesh, I will just use you in Hebrew, there's things ani ohev v'ani otzeh yoter. But there's no such thing as I like it, right? There is no such word. Now, the question is the reason why there's no such word is because there's no such thing, or is there no such word because it wasn't developed enough? Understand the question I'm asking you? Is loving an extension of liking, or is it a totally different idea? Okay? That's a very interesting question. And my conclusion is there's no such thing as liking.
It's liking.
There's no such thing as liking. In other words, it's just a lower level of loving. It gets more and more and more. Right, that's just a question of intensity, but it's not something different. And this explains many different things in halacha, and it also explains certain boundaries that there are in secular society. It makes sense to me that in English there's such a word, and in Lashon HaKodesh there is no such word. Okay? That's like a fascinating, you could think about it in your spare time about this concept. I think it's a fascinating idea, which I don't believe has anybody ever pondered this subject.
I did wonder why in Hebrew there is no word like it.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, okay, now you have an answer to the question. Okay, anyways, so in the course of preparation for that series of shiurim that I had to do, I read many tshuvas about people that are lacking brains, intelligence, what their status is. And the thing which I would like to share with you is Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's opinion. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that a person can be gadol, and I'll just use this as an example. I'm sure everybody over here knows a child who's Down syndrome, right? That's like everybody. I don't know if the word is fortunately or unfortunately. These are things which exist in society. A Down syndrome child, with all the Down syndrome things, if he's 10 years old, you could send him to the makolet and tell him to buy something, and he'll come back with the change, right?
There's a spectrum.
Obviously, and they're ones that can't move out of their bed. right? But they're saying, but the fact that he's Down syndrome, that does not mean that it can't be full functioning. And Rosh it's functioning at a certain level, which is the level of, the Gemara says, Egoz v'zarkoi v'matbei v'noitloi. And I think that many Down syndrome children are far past that level. And Rosh Zalman says about them that they have a din of a gadol when they become bar mitzvah. You understand? They have a din of a gadol. And then he adds something which is an amazing thing. This is a typical Rosh Zalman to say. So he says, even though they're mechuyev and everything, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't judge them with the same measuring stick they judge other people, because he understands that they have limited abilities. So they're judged kafi their ability, but mechuyev and ability to execute are not the same thing. Okay? Now this fellow, I'll just tell you, this is a kafes.
It says that line, that the ability and
Take a look, okay? And I'll just tell you, this fellow that I was speaking to today was a shtikla Talmud Chacham. So he says to me, I'd like to ask you a question. Are they mechuyev in tefillin or not? So I said, even if they're not, it has nothing to do with the subject we're discussing. No, if they don't have a problem that they can't retain themselves or whatever, that's a local issue. It has nothing to do with their intelligence level. So I said,
if they're incontinent.
that could happen to a regular person who's 100%. There's nothing to do with their I don't want to say the word is, I don't think you call it a disease. Their lack of
their ability to hold themselves.
yeah. No, but I'm saying, even if I'm not discussing whether they have the ability to hold themselves or not. Even if they don't, and they're putter because of that, then it's no different than a regular person that would have that inability. It's not a question of the person's general das. That's all. And therefore, I said, there's absolutely no problem. The parent can say, and I can just tell you, where I live, in Ramat Shlomo, there is a couple of Down syndrome married. Okay? And I know, so you could actually have Magiela Torah Chuppah Ma'asim Tovim. You could have it all happen. Okay? So just sharing that with you, what we're learning over here about a cotton.
Could I just ask, was this a real deal halachati, or this was a conversation you were having in a friendly? Is there something wrong with? Let's say they can't. Let's say on the top that they can't. Is there something us or
They can't what?
Let's say that it's not. They can't get the Torah Chuppah Ma'asim Tovim. Can you? Is it something us or wrong to say it? Anyways.
But the question is, should you say it? We don't say things that don't have that they are way they're going to pan out. That we're not planning for them to pan out.
Make the parents feel better.
That
There's
is
a reason to say it. If you tell
that
them
is not a reason. Maybe that will be at the end of the day a reason to make somebody say it, but that's not a reason to say it. We're asking. The question is that what the halacha should say? That's what one should do. Let's say this Down syndrome child was an orphan. No, that's the question. Now you want to know if we could say things even though we don't mean them to make people feel good. That's what we have to learn. It's a different mesachta. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
like it's a tefillah shop. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He doesn't have the ability to grow into a. If you have a person who's a shaita, right?
For sure, bona fide shop.
Yeah. I'll just tell you.
They don't say it. They won't say it.
I have no idea. But I'll just tell you the Shuch Sam Sefer says that if you have a person who's a shaita, you're not allowed to put him into a home that the food is to be given is not kosher, because you're not allowed to feed a Jew non-kosher food, and even though he's butter and it's mutter for him to eat it, you're not allowed to do that. You can't have him grow up like that, even though he's never going to grow up. Okay, but technically, I don't think that one would say it if,
without anyone's feelings.
Without anybody's feelings, not anything. We don't do things which are not, it's not going to pan out. if you tell me that there's a tzad that they could maybe grow into, that's something else. But there's no tzad. I don't think
it's
that.
not just it's not just part of the. That he should hopefully grow up to be.
Well, I don't know what those word hopefully means.
We hope for the best. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a nice slow down. Maybe they'll come up with something. I don't know. Part of the bris is that we want you to see you, the Yid that got a bris. We want to see you. It's the mamash a tefillah, it's tefillah shav. This is where we want you to be.
1 second. Is it a tefillah?
It's a tefillah in a hopeful thing that this is what we would like to see. To say it has a
About you saying to this person, right?
Yeah, about this person, this very person that.
So how could you say it if
Because this is we still want him to be there, even though we know every doctor on the planet said that he'll never. That's still what we want him to be. It's part of the. You got a bris, right? We want to see you.
It's part of the ritual.
Kind of. That's what I would have
It's
assumed.
part of the ritual. Okay. Anyways,
If we have a Down syndrome child, say over 13, would somehow go up here, he knows the cut out Rosh Hashanah, he knows you blow the shofar, he takes the shofar and he says, I'm going to blow the shofar for you now, and he blows it and actually a proper sound comes out of it. Is there any possibility that there could be Yotze from that?
I think he's Yotze.
Yes?
100%.
He's not got the din of the show telling that respect.
That's what we just spent 10 minutes explaining.
Yeah, but why? But I mean, I don't know, it's not so. What is it? The show to is someone that would like throw money.
I'm going to ask you a question. A skinhead from England, does he have a din with Shaita?
Well,
Answer the question.
no.
Okay, so what do you want?
So you can blow a shofar.
Do you know what a skinhead is? What?
He doesn't know.
Okay, well, it's like, it's saying, that's this,
The also cases where an adult can blow the shofar and you wouldn't be able to say, I heard something recently, not someone from the shul, he told me, it says in the Mishnah that on Shabbos, we discussed it last week, on Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, he used to blow the shofar in Jerusalem in the Beis Din. So he told me some people now in Jerusalem, when Shabbos comes out Rosh Hashanah, they form a Beis Din and they blow the shofar there. And a lot of people
Yosef Schlesinger, Leva Ivri. This was a very big discussion in 1850 or something like that, yeah. But that's not the accepted opinion.
No, but I mean, if one could, even though...
This is decided to discuss if somebody heard it, they were the Yotze.
Yeah, that's what
This has been discussed already for the last 150 years.
Oh,
It's
I
not
think
not a new subject.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Okay. Anyways, that's... now, a person who can hear, even though he can't talk, he's considered an intelligent person, and he can be mighty to other people. Isha p'tura mishum davi mitzaseh shazman grama. A woman is potter. Androgynous, moitzi esminoi, v'tumtum afilu esmino ena moitzi. An androgynous, we don't know what he is. We know what he is. He has a sai like a zachar tzalanik in a keva, so he can be moitzi minoi. Either he's a zachar in a keva, but his similar fellow similar to him is exactly like him. If they did a zachar, they did a zachar in a keva, and okay. But a tumtum, which we're not sure what he is, afilo esmino ena moitzi, because could be one is a zachar and one is in a keva. Okay, now mi shechetzio eved v'chetzio ben chayrin ena moitzi afilo atzmoi. This is a fascinating halacha. You have somebody. This is a fascinating halacha, and there are many fascinating hashkafas which I have based on this mitzias. You have two people that bought an eved together. Okay? I bought an eved together with Meir Simcha over here. He put in 50,000 shekel, and I put in 50,000 shekel, and we have this eved b'shutfis. Then Meir Simcha is a nice guy, and he's meshachrer his eved. Now I have an eved that's only 50% mine, and it's 50% the ben chayrin. This is called a Chatzi Eved, a Chatzi Ben Chayrin. Now, what is the halakhic status of this Eved? So the part that belongs to Meir Simcha is a regular Yisrael. The part that belongs to me has a din like a lady, right? So we have a confused individual over here, this Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin. And I'll just tell you on the subject of a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin what the Gemara says about him, and something which is a fascinating piece of Torah from the Imri Emes. The minig in Ger, in Poland, was as follows. If a Ger Chassid rented a house from somebody and he wasn't able to pay the rent, all the Ger Chassidim in that community would chip in together and pay the guy's rent. If the maskir, the landlord, was a Ger Chassid, he had to absorb the whole thing himself. Okay, that was what the Imri Emes told the Chassid to do. And there was a guy who was a Ger Chassid, and he ended up being a landlord. That's this whole story in itself. I'm not getting involved in that. The landlord of this Ger Chassid, and he was, the guy didn't have any money, so he's not going to pay because that's the Ger Rebbe said. So this Chassid went to the Ger Rebbe to ask the Ger Rebbe, I'm willing to pay like everybody else, my percentage, my 100th of the rent, but why should I lose the 99% of the rent? So the Ger Rebbe brought him 2 rayas. And one raya was from the halacha of a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin. The halacha is a person has a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin. So Meir Simcha is a very nice guy. He was Meshacher the Eved. Now, Bezdin comes knocking on my door and says, Rabbi Zachariash, be Meshacher the Eved. So I said, Meshacher the Eved? Why should I be Meshacher the Eved? I paid 50,000 shekel for this Eved. Why should I be Meshacher? So Meir Simcha is Meshacher. I said, so he's a fool. What do you want from me? Right? That's what I would say. Right? Okay. So Bezdin would say that may be true that he's a fool, but now we have an Eved that's in a precarious position, and you have to be Meshacher him. Now, if the Eved eventually gets money, could be asked to give back the money to me, but if he doesn't, I'm in the hole 50,000 shekel. So the Rebbe said, why should he be in the hole 50,000 shekel? Why should I be in the hole 50,000 shekel just because of Meir Simcha? Can you tell me? Okay, so the Ger Rebbe said the reason why is because I'm the only one that could be Meshacher this Eved, right? So it became my mitzvah. When a mitzvah becomes your mitzvah, you are mechuyev to deal with that mitzvah. So I'm the only one who can be Meshacher the Eved, so it cost me 50,000 shekel. That's what the Ger Rebbe said. Okay? Which is a fascinating thing. Many times people find themselves, they have a mitzvah that fell into their lap and says, how come nobody else is helping me? The answer is, the Ger Rebbe said, it fell into your lap, it became your mitzvah. This is like a fascinating idea, and it's worthwhile just to mention it because it has more applications than you would imagine. Okay? Okay. So, okay.
So what's the deal with the Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin in education?
He has to have a regular Jew blow for him. He cannot blow for himself. That's the Chiddush.
Because his Av just can't cover.
Right. He's 50% Meir Simcha's, right? So, or 50% mine. I got it. 50% mine, and that part can't be mitzvah 50% that belongs to Meir Simcha. So therefore, he has to have a regular Yisrael blow for him.
Can you have a ger being about to care? Is there no problem?
Why not?
You're not supposed to give him any position of authority in a shoe or something. It's not
I don't think that being a Baltakeya is called a sorora. A position of public service where you are in charge of people. It's like saying, could a ger be a chazan? Could a ger be a chazan?
It's loathsome people, isn't it?
Yeah. That doesn't mean that's not sorora. That's not a position of authority.
It's I didn't understand. I thought it meant any position in the community must go.
No, it has to be a position of authority. I'll just share with you where there's a fascinating subject, and since that question crossed your mind, I'll just share with you two big subjects which are negaya. One is there's a Rabbi Avrohom Wasserman about the subject of could a lady be a Rosh Vad Bayit? Is that called a soror? That's one. And another one is could a lady be a Rav Machshir? To say that food is kosher, a lady's not one. Right? So is being a Rav Machshir a soror or not? And that's a long tshuva in Igris Moshe. I can't remember if it's Yudei Chelik Aleph or Chelik Beis, but this is a long
Somehow I feel
He
like he says
mastered the
no.
widow.
What?
He mastered the Rav's widow that she could take over.
I'm aware of the tshuva. I just didn't remember. Is it Chelik Aleph or Chelik Beis? I think it's a Chelik Beis. Okay, if you really want to know, but okay, and that's the question. He says that it's not soror. That's what his. But his subject is this subject exactly what you're talking about, and the idea. I'll just share with you something. A lady, if I were the one to design Klal Yisrael, I would probably have that ladies make Kiddush on Friday night and be might see their husbands. Okay? Why would I do that? Because that's a Liba de Kuli Alma, and the way we do it is not a Liba de Kuli Alma.
She's you already doubting that she
Right. Okay, so there's there's absolutely no problem with having a lady be might see a man for Kiddush. Now,
She'll never do it.
that's a different issue. That's I call that's a ladies issue. That's not a lady. But there obviously there could be, sociological problems. But if let's say, and this is something which is, I say this semi-seriously. As I said, it's halacha, not lamaisa. If a husband is not in town, and you have a choice for the mother to make Kiddush, or to have a son make Kiddush, probably you're better off having the mother make Kiddush. Now, that's not usually what's done, and there are reasons for why it's not usually done like that, but be'etzem, the dry mathematical halacha would say that that's probably better to do.
Once it's not the father already, the father
Right.
of the housemaid.
Okay. Anyways, Af al pi shenoshim peturais, yecholos liskoach. They're allowed to blow. V'chein achar sheyotza kvar yochol liskoach el hotzion. Now this is a fascinating thing. I would like to share with you a line from Reb Chaim Brisker, because it's a worthwhile joke in its own right, and its relevance to over here is a very good mashal. I don't know if you people are aware, but in the last 40 years, this has gone to great lengths, the amount of people who wear tchelis. I'm not right now discussing the question of wearing tchelis. The Beis Halevi was against wearing tchelis. The Reb Chaim was against wearing tchelis. I'm not going. Now, somebody asked Reb Chaim Brisker, what's the problem with tchelis? If it's not tchelis, so the famous line is, Im lo yoyo lo yazik. What do you have to lose? Either it's tchelis, and if it's not, so then what do you have to lose? So there are many answers to this question. When Reb Chaim was asked that question, Im lo yoyo lo yazik, Reb Chaim said, it's an interesting thing. The other day I was walking down the street, and I saw a guy wearing glasses, but there were no lenses in the frames. So I asked him, why are you wearing glasses if you have no lenses? He said, lo yoyo lo yazik, right? So that was Reb Chaim's answer. But that was Reb Chaim's answer, and it has exactly to do with the price of tea in China. Anyway, that was his answer to the question, and I'm just saying this is relevant for the subject of noshim blowing shofar to be mighty themselves. Now, if a lady who blows a shofar is not makayim any mitzvah, then it's for sure usher, because you're not allowed to blow a shofar for no purpose. What? Yeah, it'll be usher. The reason that we say that she's allowed to blow a shofar, or you're allowed to blow a shofar for her, is because we paskin that nashim, even though they're not mechuyev mitzvah shazman grama, they're einu mitzvah isa, and even though a mitzvah isa is better than a einu mitzvah isa, but they did do a mitzvah. So being that they did do something, it's not im lo yoyel lo yazik, it's im lo yoyel pot. So and therefore they're allowed to blow a shofar, and not only that, that's enough of a reason that you can blow a shofar to be might see them. A man that already was yaitze, he could yochol isko elo itzion. Aval ein mevorchos v'lo yevorchu lahem. They shouldn't make a bracha, and you shouldn't make a bracha for them. Says the Rama, hold your breath. Uminag shanoshim mevorchos hamitzvah say shazman grama. Our mitzvah minig is that they make a bracha. Al kain kan tevorchen la'atzon. They should make a bracha themselves. Avachem lo yevorchu lahem im kvar yotzo. If somebody else was already yaitz, they should make a bracha for them. Aval im toikim la'ish hamechuyev. Then you can make a bracha for the man and include them. And the Mishnah Berurah will say that the minig is that we make a bracha for them if necessary. Now, okay. Yacholos the loyamin kiwan the petura is yesh chil yom tov v'tikiyasam. We don't say there's chil yom tov by the bloy. The kaim alon gola mitzvah v'oisa v'shein mitzvah v'oisa. Alma the mishein mitzvah v'oisa nami schar yesh lo. He has schar. V'adin cotton yotol it ka av lechatchila kedei sheyischanich. He's allowed to blow in order that he should be nischanech. Now, this does not mean that a cotton is allowed to practice shofar blowing on Rosh Hashanah. We didn't say that. We just said to be nischanech, you're allowed to blow.
On Shabbos, is he allowed to practice?
No. Okay. V'chein achar sheyotza kvar, etzad eloim ha'af sheyotza lo yavirin kivan shu atzma in etzarach atal etzkach su over mishum shvus when you're going to blow for ladies. We call mokom k'tzas mitzvah yesh lahem b'tkiyosam. They have some kind of a mitzvah when they blow. Our labor baruch is the may tzivanu b'davar she'enu mechuyaves lo midivrei Torah lo midivrei seifrim. How can they make a bracha with tzivanu? With Hashem Mangrova, they're potter af midrabanan. Okay, now there is a discussion, even according to those who say that they can make a bracha if they can make a shechiyanu. That's a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get involved in that. Okay. What's the minhag with ladies with shachiyanu? They make a shechiyanu.
They make a shachiyanu?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, yesh omer sheyiska lahem kodim sheyishma tkiyas beis hakneses. Aval Rabbi Avrohom masik b'shem ha'maril shelo yiska b'shalosh rishonos. Why? Because the mifkad adina, the din is very strong. Ve'en kedai liska b'yechidos. Ela yiska lebachar tkiyas beis hakneses. Ve'hem yavorchu la'atzmon. O kiva o shechav aliva shalotzes b'tkiyas beis hakneses. V'yoz he can make a bracha and be might see them. Okay, that's the shitas of the Mishnah Berurah. Hamudar hanameh haveroi mutar liskoyalo t'kiyashal mitzvah. If a person was mudar hana from somebody else, since we say mitzvah slav lahenesnit, no, that's not called that he's benefiting from you, and he's allowed to do it. V'tafku utokea me'elav lo yitzil. Avlim omelo amudar l'tkol otzieni. I said, please vote for me also, because that's called that you're gaining from him. Amar kodim t'kiyaso alai, then b'chol inyan also. Okay, next halacha. Hamisasek b'tkiyas shofar l'islamid. A person is practicing. Lo yotzi yadei chayvasai. V'chein hashomea min hamisasek lo yotza. V'chein hatokea l'shoirer v'lo niskaven l'tkiyas mitzvah lo yotza. Any time a person blows the shofar, even if he does it 100% properly, if he didn't have in mind to be yotza the mitzvah, he's not yotza. Niskaven mishmoa shomea lotzes yitei chayvasa v'lo niskaven hatokea lo yitziyoi. If the person listening says, I want to be yotza what this guy's blowing, but the person blowing didn't have in mind to do it for the mitzvah, o sheniskaven hatokea lo yitziyoi v'lo niskaven hashomea lotzes lo yotza dei chayvasa at sheyiskaven shomea umashmiya. unless both of them had in mind to be blowing the shofar to be yaitz the mitzvah. This is very important because many times there are people who are blowing for not the proper reasons, and you're not yaitz.
This is only dealing with someone who's mitzvah.
And not?
Like, for example, last week I asked the Rav if my wife can stand on the balcony here and she hears a chauffeur from the shul, and the Rav said, yes, she could do that, and she's Yotze. It's obviously the Baltakaya here only has Kavanah to mostly people in the shul, he also has Kavanah to mostly people up here outside the shul.
Well, I don't know, you say it's obvious, we're soon going to see halachos is mafurish that it's not like that. The Baal Tekei and Shul has a mind to be might say anybody that hears him.
Yeah. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, okay. Misha Tokeh but it's kavan hoitzi kol hashomet kiyosoi. A person who blows and has a mind, whoever hears to yaitza. V'shama hashomeh but it's kavan lotzi dechai basoi. Afal pi she'en Tokeh miskavan leploi nizeh. He didn't have him in mind, and he doesn't even know he's there. Yotza. Shrei niskavan hoitzi kol misha sho yishmanu. The figach misha haya mahalach baderech. Yoshev esach beisoi. Your wife. She's sitting in her house. V'shamat kiyas mishliach tzibor. Yotza. V'niskaven lotzes. Sharei shliach tzibor v'chav l'hoitzi es harabim yedei chavaso. The shliach tzibor has a mind to be mighty your wife. Okay, this is exactly your situation.
Is that he really has to have that in mind, or his position means?
Yeah, many acharim say his position means that. Okay. Misha hayavalach baderech. Okay. Isa b'yeshami lo shana ela ba'over. Aval ha'omer chazaka kived. If you have somebody who stopped to listen, then we say the chazaka is that he had kavanah. Va'ayim bel yerabash akos megon se shamim the oiver va'omer nishma called kiyas. Oz amina after eno zeichem kiven. Oz lot says mikol bokom chazaka shekiven. If we know he stopped to listen. Al b'shaya amir v'beisoi lo amina chazaka kiven. Person standing in his house and we don't know that he stopped what he was doing to listening, then we don't know have a chazaka that he was mechaven. Suma chay b'tekiyas. V'mhaya muchzik litkaya b'chol shana v'silkuhu. Im lo yimtzu baki kamo yachzu leminuyo. You're allowed to have the suma blow for everybody else. U'lechatchila ein l'salkoi mipnei shu suma. Avapi shenimtzu baki kamo. Even if you found somebody else who is a baki, because you shouldn't take away somebody's position. Shomei atkiyas b'shivas u'bavad shalei amod rochum b'beis hakneses kol she'eshet le'yishma kol shofar kol avor, which we learned last week. If you're going to be standing far away, you may not be hearing the kol shofar. You're going to be hearing the kol havara, the echo, and you're not going to be yaitza, and therefore you shouldn't do that. Okay.